Hey there. So I wanted to make a really quick tutorial to show you the most basic, fundamental, how the heck do I get started in After Effects. We're not going to look at a hundredth of the buttons or any of the processes. We just want to start, how do I get something in? How do I get a composition created? How do I edit a title in there? How do I animate the title? And how do I get it out of the system? So we're just going to start by opening up our Creative Cloud app, and we're going to launch After Effects. It may have a couple of versions installed. I know I do. Okay, first thing you'll notice when you open this up, and you may get a warning about your graphics driver not being bad, or not being good, rather, but it'll give you an option to continue with known issues. You may have to deal with the graphics driver at some point. I know I had that warning earlier. So the first thing you'll see is this sort of getting started page. I always say, screw that, let's close that. You can always get to that page by clicking on this little home button here at the top. So first things first, your interface should look pretty much like mine. The project and effects windows will be here, your viewers will be here, your timeline's down here, and all of your effects and text and all that stuff are going to be over here to mess with that. But real simple, we're going to talk about how do we get something in, how do we create a composition out of it, how do we edit a title, or text onto it, how do we animate that text, and then how do we export. So we're going to simply, in the project tab, so you've got two tabs probably. If you don't see the effect controls, that's okay, we'll bring that up later. Under the project tab, just simply double click. And then we can go in and choose our file. I've got this, I don't even know what file this is. So you're going to have an option here. You'll probably leave most of this default, but click on this Create Composition button. Make sure that's checked, so when you import that, you're going to have up here in the project window the video file will be represented. I can see it's an AV, it calls it an AVI file. And then above that is the composition. So the composition is the container down here that holds all your clips. And you can rename both. So to rename anything in this window, you click it with the mouse and hit the Enter key on the keyboard, and that will bring up the name field. I think you can also right click and rename stuff there as well. Okay, so we've got the clip in. The next question is, how do we, when we find the part that we want, and we're just going to keep this simple, we only want one little bit, maybe just to make a silly GIF out of, like, how about ducks walking, right? So we're going to find the first frame that we like, and the best way to go frame by frame is hold Control and then use the left and right arrows. So Control left goes back a frame. And then on the first frame, hit the B key, which moves the work area start point up to your playhead there. But B does that. And then I'm just going to play it. Okay, so I'm going to find the last frame of those ducks. And I'm going to hit the N key. N is in end. And it moves the work area marker back to the playhead there. So now you've got this short kind of section designated as maybe the area that you want to work with. Now here's what you do to trim all that down. So in other words, let's just assume we don't care about any of the stuff at the beginning or any of the stuff at the end. Now we're going to do this. We're going to go up to Composition, Trim Comp to Work Area. So now your composition is only that long. Now if you do want to make the composition shorter or longer in a different way, you can go up to Composition Settings, or Control K is the fast way to get there. And you can always adjust the duration to whatever you want. And then use your zoom slider to kind of see the rest of that. And you'll see here in the composition settings you can change the width and height, the frame rate, and all that. If you've created a composition based on the footage, you probably wouldn't mess with any of that. Okay, so my composition is the right length, and so now maybe I just want to add some text onto this. So the easiest way to do that is down here in the composition. We're just going to right click and say New Text, and then it's ready for you to type. If you don't click anything at all after you do that, it's ready for you to type. If you were to, let's undo that. So if we create a new text and then you click away somewhere, it's not ready for you to type. You can click and drag, but that's going to create a new text layer. So here's the biggest tip I can give you for that. If you start by right-clicking and do New Text, my habit is I double click on that layer, on the name of that layer, and that automatically gets me into typing mode. Right? The typing tool is up here in the top bar. So when you're done typing, this is maybe a bit tricky. Click away from the viewer window, maybe in the composition, and you want to get away from the text, the type tool, and go back to your selection tool. So V does that. V does that very easily. So now I can grab the ducks, and then if I want to make the ducks bigger, you can grab the corner, but that sort of gets you in the danger of changing the aspect of that. So down here in the layer, let's talk about layer controls. So we've got, if you take the little caret here and you twirl down and go to transform, you'll see scale, rotation, opacity, anchor point, position. Right? So I like to use this to scale it. So if I just grab that, it's already locked X and Y into that. So now I've got it nice and big. Okay, and then you can use the position as well for fine-tune control, as well as just grab it with your mouse and just move it around how you like it. If you grab an object and then hold shift, it will lock it into whatever axis you kind of drag it along. So in other words, it won't move diagonally if you hold shift, but you have to hold shift after you grab it. So that's how you change the scaling and position of that. Now, if you want to animate the text, and we want to animate it coming onto the screen, and let's just animate the text just walking across the screen. So here's how this works. So notice that beside each of these properties here is a little stopwatch. If you turn on that stopwatch, you'll notice down here you've got a little kind of a little diamond. That's a keyframe, and that's sort of an animation point, right? So if you turn it off, the keyframes go away completely. So I'll keep this really simple. We want ducks to start off screen to the left, and we want it at the end to have walked itself across to the right. So we need just 2 keyframes for that. So we're going to go to the beginning, we're going to turn on our stopwatch, and we're going to put it in the position where we want it to start. We're going to move this to the end, we're going to drag it, and I'm holding shift after I grabbed it to drag it perfectly straight across. You could use the controls down here if you wanted to. So notice when I dragged it, after I moved the playhead back to the end and then dragged the position of that object, it automatically added a keyframe for me. So now I know when I play that back, right? So now we know that the text is going to crawl across the screen. All right, and you could, add a keyframe. You can add a keyframe to every 1/30th of a second or whatever, or 25th of a second. So if I were to park it kind of right in the middle and then move this down, you'll see now that the motion path says it's going to start up here, travel down, and back up again. Right? I see a weird green frame in there. It's probably just an artifact. It may be because this computer really doesn't have a good graphics card. But I think that's... So that's it. I mean, that's how you animate anything in After Effects, is you turn on the stopwatch and you add keyframes. So scale, I could add a keyframe here in the middle so it stays at that scale. But let's say at the beginning it's real small. And it grows. And then at the end, maybe we go small again. Now you can do something like, let's say you want to have the exact same scale value at the end as you do at the beginning. We'll just click on the keyframe and just copy and paste. So Control C, come down here, Control V. So it'll paste the same properties. There you go. And that's as simple as really as I'm going to make that. So we've just animated some text. Now all we need to do, and we can add motion blur just to make it look even sweeter. That little button right there looks like a bunch of stacked plates. That'll give it a little bit of just a little bit of motion blur, make it look a little bit more realistic, I guess is maybe not the right term. But okay, so we've created our awesome video, and we want to get it out of the system so we can post it on social media. We're going to do a send to render queue. There's a couple ways to do this. I might get some complaints that there's better ways to do this, but depending on the length of it, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to Composition, Send to Render Queue, or Add to Render Queue, sorry. Control M. And that brings up this tab called the render queue. And under output mode, we're going to click on the word lossless, and we're going to change the format to QuickTime Movie, and choose something like Apple ProRes 422 or HQ or L2. It kind of depends on how big you want the file or how much you're willing to work with. Apple ProRes 422 will be fine. Click OK, and then you're going to see the output to is the name of the file. And if you click on that, that will let you choose the destination. So this is going out to my videos folder. I'm going to call this Bingo with Text. Hit save. Hit render. It does its thing. It chimes when it's done, and your video file is created. And that's it. That's the basics of getting in and getting out.